What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Sheehan Show with me, Sean Sheehan, here on Sherdog.com. And I am back with another PFL preview as PFL 7 2025 goes down in the Wintrust Arena in beautiful Chicago, Illinois. The Windy City, isn't it? Is that right? That is right, I think. And I'll be honest, I'm really excited about this card. Watched a good bit of tape in over the last couple of hours here, and I'll be honest, there's certain fights on this card, and obviously the tournament fights, as we know, the semifinals, that are really, really intriguing in terms of the old guard that we had seen in Bellator and the PFL, and some of the new younger guys who, some of whom have taken setbacks and are on their way back, or some of whom are on the way to glory, let's put it that way, and this is their next step. And that's always intriguing to me, you know, those XY, one going up, one going down type of fights, and to see who the guys are, one in their prime and one like just getting into their prime, which is the case for one or two fights here. So I'm pretty intrigued by that. And I'll be honest, it's been a really good season so far. You know, we talked about it so much now. I feel like sometimes I'm a party political broadcast for PFL or something, but I don't know. I just feel like there's been a lot of talk about the bad things in MMA recently, and you know what? I've been part of that too. I think it's not been a great year for MMA, but if you look at the fights and the fights only, like PFL have been a shining light. Like the level of matchmaking and excitement and entertainment and quality of the PFL in terms of the number of the percentage of fights that would satisfy the criteria I just set out there is probably about 50% higher than what it's been in the UFC. Like, I don't know, let's throw out a number here. There's probably like 90% of the PFL fights this year have been good, and could you say 40% of the UFC ones? I think that's probably, maybe that's been a little bit kind to both of them, but maybe it's, you know, if you go down to 80 for PFL, it's still pretty good. If you go down to 30 for the UFC, it's not looking great. So, yeah, I'd encourage anyone, if you're listening to this, tune into the PFL, because there's been some really, really good stuff. And this is the light heavyweights and heavyweights on the line here. So, sorry, the middleweights, the light heavyweights, and the heavyweights up here, which, you know, can be weight classes that sometimes aren't the standouts, let's put it that way, in the world of mixed martial arts. But again, the way the cookie crumbled here, and it's, you know, I was going to call it matchmaking there. These fights are, you know, there's no matchmaking in these fights. These are the guys who won, earned their place there, and now they're you know, they're on the way, and they're going to be the people in the finale, because they'll win again here and earn their way there. So, you know, we've obviously a lot of the John Jones, Tom Aspinall sort of stuff over the last few weeks. Can get pretty tiresome for people who maybe are meritocracy based, but you know, the PFL still has that. So let's get into it, and let's talk about the fights. I'm going to start with the main event, Fabian Edwards against Joshua Silveira. And this is a big matchup for both of these guys. Like, they're exactly, I suppose, counterparts. And funnily enough, I hadn't noticed this until I just looked at it right now. Fabian Edwards 14-4, Joshua Silveira 14-4. I remember as a fight happened like that before. Funnily enough, Leon Edwards against Bilal Muhammad, when they fought, their records were the exact same, I'm pretty sure. And then for a couple of fights after that, they were as well. Now maybe they're a little bit different now anyway. And even when they fought, it was a no contest the first time, so the records even after their fight stayed the same. So it happens again with an Edwards brother here, as he's like the Bellator side of it now. He's fought his third fight in the PFL, one of which was the super fights against Johnny Evelyn. Obviously, he fought Impa Kasanganay in the first, and this is Joshua Silveira's numerous fight in the PFL. He made his debut in 2022, and as far, I believe, 11 times. This is his 12th fight. Here, let's go. So he's 18 altogether, and I might have beforehand 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what was that? 7 minus 11, 12. Yeah, I was right. Was I right? I think I was right. Yeah, there we go. So this is 12th fight in the PFL. And like, again, the same records, basically. Two of the last four have been wins, and two of the last four have been losses for Fabian. For Silveira, exactly the same. Both obviously won their last fight, both looked good in their last fight, and they're coming into this place as, you know, guys who both 30, funny enough, they're both 32 as well. Okay, I was like, are they going to have the same birthday? They're both 6'1", but both at the same weight class, virtually identical. Where's Mike Goldberg when you need him here? So yeah, there you go. Very, very similar, these guys. I would say, like, I think Joshua Silveira in the PFL has kind of threatened to hit a level later on maybe in his career, whereas Fabian, I feel like, has gotten to a level, but maybe, look, he obviously fought some really, really good guys and wasn't able to, you know, to get over the likes of Johnny Eblin a couple of times. And, you know, the Costello-Vancinas fight was a split decision. The Austin Vanderford fight, I went back and watched that recently. I think he won that fight, so that was very, very close. And even, you know, the first Eblin fight, I was at that fight, wasn't I? I think it was. That was close until it wasn't close anymore. And the second one, you know, kind of the same, but didn't turn, I think. But Fabian has been one of these guys. Obviously, he's Leon Edwards' brother, and there's always been talk of him because of that. But I remember when Leon was kind of on his way up in the UFC, and he wasn't the champion that he became by any means. And, you know, my colleague over in the Severe MMA podcast, Graham, followed Fabian from a young age, went one of these amateur fights and everything. And he was always dead set in this guy being really, really good. And I watched some of his amateur fights. There's one he got was it early in his career? He got a lovely armbar anyway. No, that was actually in his fourth fight against Ken Kapainen. But I think he got like a few wild finishes in his amateur days, and he was undefeated. I think 10-0 as an amateur as well. And you just thought that this guy was going to go on to absolute superstardom, and it just hasn't got there yet. You know, he beat Gegard Mousasi, and you're thinking that's when it's going to go there. But then he met Johnny Eblin. You know, the fact that Johnny Eblin isn't in this might be manna for heaven for him, because he can maybe get there without having to take that big step. And for Silveira, at the other side, obviously he was up at light heavyweight, now down at middleweight, and, you know, he looked really good beating Mike Shipman last time out. I picked Mike Shipman to win that fight, and obviously he ended up, Silveira ended up winning him. So with all that said, right, they have both have had big chances. They, you know, Silveira obviously fought against Akhmedov in 2022, lost that. Fought Kasanganite in 23, lost that. Fought him again last year, and lost and didn't get to the playoffs even. So this is the time. If he's to win this and get to the finale this time, it would feel like a coming of age. You tried a couple of times, and this is the time where you get there. For Fabian, he's tried a couple of times, and is he going to get there? But for one of them, it's going to be a massive knockback in their career. Like, I think for Fabian Edwards, I think he's expected to win this, right? And he would himself expect to win it. I think for Silveira, a guy who's been in there, right, with the top guys and has come up short, I think he'll be thinking, I need to win it this year. So who's going to win? It's very interesting. Like, how do they match up? Like, Joshua Silveira, obviously a very, very good wrestler, a finisher on the ground. You know, the 14 wins are two decisions in there, but the finishes are all evenly split. 6 knockouts, 6 submissions. But it's been 3 decisions in a row for him recently. It was an injury before that, and then there was a decision before that as well. So, you know, with the higher level, I suppose it's becoming less and less finishes and more decisions. And I think if he has to win here, I think that's probably the way he's going to do it too. I think he has to outlast Fabian Edwards. He has to, you know, do what the likes of Austin Vanderford and Johnny Eblin of people have done. Wrestle, because, you know, Fabian's obviously really good on the feet, but Silveira's ground game, his jiu-jitsu is very dangerous. And we have seen Fabian before, you know, when he tries to get up, when he's eager to get up, he's well able to get up. But when someone is attacking him and putting him in a place that if you move, you could be in grave danger, he will stay in those positions. That's probably one of the biggest issues, I think, in his game. We saw that look against Vanderford especially. The problem is, like the Eblin first fight, when you do move out of those positions, you can get caught badly. So, that's how Silveira wins, and I suppose that's how Fabian loses. How does Fabian win? Fabian needs to keep the fight on the feet. He needs to get behind his jab. He needs to, do you know what he needs to do? He needs to do what he did at the end of the last fight against Impic Sanganai and go out and let your hands go and finish a guy. Like, it's weird, and I never say this, and you know, people who listen to these previews and my review shows and everything like that, my analysis is never like, oh, just let your hands go. Like, sometimes it could be more attacking or you know, a little bit of extra volume or something like that. I'm going to say that about someone later on as well when we get to another fight. But for Fabian, he's one of those guys that you think if this guy could almost get out of his own way at times, he would be a world-class fighter. And like, not to say he isn't a world-class fighter, but I think he could be top of the top. Like, I've said it before, but I think he fights a little bit too like Leon. Like, he's a different fighter to Leon. Like, I think he's a more aggressive fighter. I think he's a better, like, fast twitch athlete. Like, Leon's ability to get to the very top is based on his ability to be one of the most well-rounded guys in the world, and maybe not a specialist anywhere. Now, Fabian is well-rounded, but he can specialize. Like, his ability to strike is wonderful, world-class. His power, as we saw in the last fight, is top-notch, but it feels like we don't see it enough. You know, 6 decisions in his wins, 3 decisions in his losses, 9 decisions out of 18 fights. Half his fights granted. That's too many for a guy as talented as Fabian Edwards. Against Silveira, let those hands go, let the jab go. Like, Silveira is a good wrestler, he can get the fight to the ground, but I don't think he's the best wrestler in the world, especially out in the open. Stay away from the cage and you should be fine. This is a fight I expect Fabian Edwards to win, and I think something might have clicked in that last fight. And against a guy like Silveira, I think I don't like saying this, but I think he needs to go out and have no respect and just go for it. So Fabian Edwards is the pick there, but I'm looking forward to that. There's ways to win for both of them. There's ways to win for both of them, no doubt about it. We will go division by division here. So we'll go to the middleweight division with Dalton Rosta and Aaron Jeffery in the rematch of their fight. Dalton Rosta, you look at the record there, 10-1, Jeffery 16-5, and the one for Dalton Rosta is Aaron Jeffery in a fight that took place in 2023. I went back and watched that in the last couple of hours there or so. And you better like this video, you better subscribe, and you better leave a comment for me having to go back and watch that 15 minutes, because I'll tell you what, that was a bad fight. That was a terrible fight. I don't expect this one to be like that, though. It's the sort of fight, if you're, especially Dalton Rosta, but Aaron Jeffery as well. Less so Aaron Jeffery, because I don't think he was kind of in control of the way the fight went. Rather, in the result he was, because he won. But I think Rosta just stuck to his wrestling too much and tried the same way too much. So basically the fight, for the whole fight, was Rosta trying to take Jeffery down, Jeffery pushing his head down, Rosta holding on to the leg, trying to get the wrestling going again, and Aaron Jeffery kind of leaning on top of him, and the referee just letting him at it for 15 minutes, basically. And Jeffery landed a few shots, a few elbows and things like that, and that was that, basically. So I think a few things have happened since. Dalton Rosta has been in there with Norbert Navinia Jr. and Sadibou C, and he went to decision with Norbert Navinia, again, at that fight in Dublin, and he looked really good. Now it was a majority decision. It was a close enough fight, but I think Norbert Navinia Jr. is one of the best prospects in the world at middleweight. And after that fight, I thought the same about Rosta, because his striking looked good, but the wrestling as well was very good. Again, I would say the same thing about the Sadibou C fight. He looked good everywhere. Ended up getting him with the, was it the Anaconda? It's written down here in Sherdog as a Bravo choke, which I like. And he looked really good in that as well. I think the difference between the first Jeffery fight, and it's funny to think he's only had 2 fights since then, but it was 2023 as well. He's only fought once a year since. Obviously, he's in the tournament now, so it's going to be more than that. I think his striking has improved, and that will be a difference. I think I don't think he's going to be sticking to the wrestling. He's going to be trying to wrestle. And I think, and I don't think he's going to be trying to strike either. I think what will benefit him from not being one-dimensional in this fight will be that one dimension can now be set up by the second dimension he has, which is the ability to strike. I think, like, Aaron Jeffery is what Aaron Jeffery is. a very, very good fighter, a well-rounded fighter, and a guy who, no matter who you are, if you're not at it 100%, he will beat you. And I'm just looking at the odds here. Aaron Jeffery is the favorite. Obviously, he won the last time. And, Aaron Jeffery is one of these guys that I feel like I maybe underestimate a little bit. He beat Murad Ramazanov earlier on in the year. Obviously, it was a split decision close fight, but and like I don't necessarily what was my opinion on the fight in terms of the judging. You could maybe guess that one, but beating some good guys like Douglas Lee, Austin Vanderford. He's been in there. Even his losses are Fabian Edwards, John Salter, Carvalho, and Brendan Allen, and Sean Brady. Like, there is no jokes in there anywhere. So, he's beaten everyone else, and it's tough for me to come in here and say like Dalton Rosta is definitely going to win, because he definitely didn't win the last time. But I just have a feeling those adjustments will be enough. And if you're a guy like Dalton Rosta as well, you have been thinking about that fight for the last 2 years. Everything, and maybe not everything, but let's go with me here for a second. Like, everything you have done is in preparation to be better than that fight. And what better way to prove those improvements by going in and beating the guy who you couldn't beat the last time? And I really think that is a massive thing for someone like Rosta. Like, usually at this stage of a career, someone who's 10-1 or a really good record like that, sometimes you can be complacent, but for him, there's going to be none of that. Again, I think the striking is going to be better. I think he's going to land some shots, and I think he's going to be able to wrestle better against Jeffery this time. What does Jeffery need to do? Jeffery can't do what he did in the last fight again, because what he did in the last fight is basically win the stall. What he has to do here is, and I think what Rosta was afraid of and why he kept fighting the way he did, push Rosta back and tire him out, and he's really good at doing that. Like, Aaron Jeffery's one of the best middleweights in the world at doing that. Like, him in there with a guy like a Pereira or an Adesanya would be a real tough matchup. A really, really tough matchup. Like, if they could keep him and control him on the feet, absolutely. But if they can't, and it's very hard too, Aaron Jeffery is really, really tough. But I believe in Rosta. I think the striking is going to set up the wrestling, and I think he's going to win the decision in that one. So I'm going with the underdog there. Right, let's talk about the light heavyweights. And Sullivan Cauley against Phil Davis first of all here. This is this is a fight again between the up and coming guy and the guy that's been there for a long time. Well, this is the first one we're talking about here, because the first four guys kind of all up and coming guys waiting to get to that level. But Sullivan Cauley, 8 fights into his career, 7-1, only lost to Luke Traynor. Came back and won his last 2 fights, one in Bellator and then against Alex Polizzi earlier on in the year. And then Phil Davis, a much derided fighter over the years, but went in there against Rob Wilkinson last time out, and it's tough for me to sit here and say that's the best performance of Phil Davis's career, but maybe it's the most unexpected and impressive performance of his career. I went back and I watched it today, and he looked so good. He looked a real different fighter. He looked dynamic. I wrote down the word dynamic in my notes, and that's not a thing I thought I'd say about Phil Davis. My only thing watching back the fight is, will he do it again? Like, is that the sort of fight you will fight against Sullivan Cauley? Like, against Rob Wilkinson. Like, Rob Wilkinson is a powerful hitter, but a technical guy, and he likes to set things up, and being dynamic, moving at a different pace might be a good way to fight against Rob Wilkinson. Is that a good way to fight against Sullivan Cauley? Like, I went back and I watched a few Sullivan fights, and the thing about Sullivan Cauley is there's very little tape on him. Because Sullivan, coming from a background where I'm pretty sure he wrestled growing up, but like, all of his fights are quick knockouts. He's only one submission. He is. Maybe I'm wrong about the aggressive growing up thing. I just assumed that, considering he's one of those guys who was signed to Bellator early in his career. But he does wrestle in some of his fights, but it's on the feet really. And even like the last fight, Alex Polizzi tried to wrestle him, and that's what got him knocked out with the Travis Brown elbows. So I'm excited to see this one and see how it goes. Like, either way, I don't think Cauley's going to go in there and try to wrestle Davis. I think he's going to go in there and attempt to put that pace on Davis in early. Like, I don't think he'll, not necessarily an Aaron Jeffery type of pace, but a pace in, who would I describe it as? I don't know, a Junior Dos Santos type of pace where he walks and bang, walks and bang, walks and bangs. But like, that's a tough thing to do against Phil Davis. 0 submission losses, 0 knockout losses in his career. For a guy, Cauley, here is his 8 fights. The round they ended in. Round 1, 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 and you guessed it, round 1. He's only gone past the 4-minute mark, the 3-minute mark 3 times. This guy does not have a lot of experience, so I don't know. Like, looking at the betting odds here, Phil Davis is a sizable enough favorite, minus 260. We'll talk more obviously about that in the betting show, but if the pick is going to have to be Phil Davis here, I think I've gone back and forth in these picks, to be honest. I just think that last performance was so impressive, it's hard to ignore. I don't think Cauley's going to knock him out. I think if Davis maybe loses the first round, I think he has the ability to come back and win the second and third round. Cauley, to me as well, I don't know, does his style, like, he's going to have to adjust his style, I think. I don't think he can come out and fight. I just said that's the way he fights, but I don't think he can come out and fight that way. And does he have the ability to adjust his style and fight and beat a guy like Phil Davis, who's been in there with the who's who? Tough to say. So I think, like, it might be a bit of a bland play, but I think Phil Davis has to be the pick here. So that's that on the first light heavyweight matchup. The second light heavyweight matchup is, again, very similar. Antonio Carlos Jr. against Simeon Powell. You know, obviously Shoeface has been around for a very, very long time, 17-6 in his career, while Simeon Powell is 11-1. You know, Shoeface made his debut all the way back in 2013, whereas Powell has only been fighting since 2021, which is a little bit crazy. Powell was in PFL Europe, ended up losing to Jacob Neto, whose name I always pronounce wrong, as well as Simeon Powell's. But I think I got them both right there. But bounced back after that, beat Rafael Xavier and then Carl Albrechtsen last time out as well in a fight I watched back today, and I feel like, I watched all these fights. He started that fight badly and came on and fought brilliantly in the end. I've been giving out on Twitter all day about the clinch. That's the sort of fight that you want to look at, the clinch, because the elbows and the beautiful shots from Simeon Powell in that clinch were absolutely brilliant. Whereas we know all about Shoeface, Antonio Carlos Jr. Like, watch back the fight against Carl Moore, and you know, he's at 35 years of age now, having, you know, he didn't fight in the 2023 season, came back in 2024, ended up having 1 win, but then lost to Alex Pelisian in kind of a bit of a shock. You know, I didn't think he looked amazing. Maybe there was a bit of ring rust, you know, being 11 months out of the cage against Carl Moore, but he got it done in the end. It was a bit of a weird one, that fight, if you remember. There was the could have been the fight ending knee on the ground, and a lot of different things happened in that fight, but when the fight got to the floor, he looked as good as ever. It's on the feet, I think. He's never looked amazing on the feet, but he goes for things and sets things up because he's so dangerous on the ground. You know, and he I thought his wrestling looked good in that Carl Moore fight. He got a lovely single leg at one stage, and like his ability to control in the half guard is just so good, you know. But Powell is going to have to keep this fight on the feet. He's going to have to control it. I look back at that last fight, and I feel like what did improve in that fight was his ability to control the fight better on the feet. But will that be enough against Shoeface? I don't know. Only time will tell. Powell is the favourite, minus 156, plus 122 for Antonio Carlos Jr. Like, Powell's one loss has been via knockout, so like it's unlikely that Cara de Zapato is going to knock him out. It's going to be more likely a submission if he does get it done. I don't know. I think if Powell looks at the last fight, realizes like this guy is kind of gone a bit slow and takes advantage of it, I think he could win. But if it's another slow start for Powell, I think he'll almost certainly get submitted. You know, he has been taken down a couple of times, but he has good wrestling himself and stuff as well. I don't know. Am I completely buying into Powell's ability to control a guy like Shoeface for 15 minutes? No, I'm not. But am I picking him to win anyway? Yes, I am. I'm going with Simeon Powell there. Right. Let's talk about the heavyweights. A bit of a different look, I suppose, to the heavyweights this time around. I suppose the pick of the clash here is Valentin Moldavsky and Alexander Romanov, but I'm going to talk about Oleg Popov against Rodrigo Nascimento first. Popov 20-2, Nascimento 12-3, and you know, Popov went on a good run last year. I was kind of expecting him to win the finale, but he got submitted in short order by Denis Goltsov last year. Came back here, didn't look amazing against Carl Williams, and I remember saying this post show or maybe the podcast the next week that I might have to myself recalibrate my thoughts on Popov, because I really thought last year was going to be his year. You know, beat Linton Vassell, you know, and Devian Franklin and Steve Mowry as well. Like Mowry, the big tall guy who's a very, very good fighter. Like even, you know, in his Bellator debut, he beat Gokhan Sakaram, which is a very, very good win. And, you know, again, a fight I was at, and he looked a big guy in there. Let's put it that way. Nascimento on the other side of it, then, you know, a lot of experience. Obviously fought in the UFC. He was in there with Romanov, who we will talk about in a minute, but also, you know, Derek Lewis won a good few fights as well, beat Dantel Mays, Ilir Latifa, and you know, he's a guy who, when the fight goes to the ground, he's really, really good there. He has a lot of submissions, but not in a while, you know, and I feel like maybe that wrestling against Popov is going to be tough for him. Like Popov is a block of a man and a very good wrestler and very good at stopping people. And I'm just looking here and not surprised that I think he's minus 215 favorite. And I think it's going to be tough for Nascimento without that big threat of the power on the feet. You know, as I said, only 2 knockouts in 16 fights as a professional in the heavyweight division is not massive. You know, Popov doesn't have the best record himself. He's 9-22 again for a heavyweight. Not the most impressive, but I think that might be a factor here as well. I think he might be able to Popov to make Nascimento kind of respect him a little bit more than vice versa. I think he'd be able to stop the takedown for the most part. Now, again, this may be me giving him a little bit too much credit after the last 2 performances weren't epic, but I think Popov might bounce back here, and I'm going to pick him to win this. The other side then is a little bit tougher, and let me just check the odds before we start here. Again, it's very close. Moldavsky's minus 172, and Romanov is plus 134, and you know, that's kind of where I lean as well. I'm gonna go with Moldavsky as the pick. 14-4 in his career, and I always it's not the best stat in the world for Moldavsky, but he has 12 decisions out of 19 fights as a heavyweight. You know, one of them was a no contest as well. That's quite astonishing, really, for a heavyweight as good as him. You know, he's not the most powerful guy in the world, not the biggest finisher, but like what he has and what he is over other people is he's faster, he's a better athlete, he doesn't fight like a heavyweight. Very unusual. Like looking at him on the outside, like I spoke about Phil Davis being dynamic. Like for a heavyweight, now if you're looking at him versus, you know, Ilir Topuria, I was going to say Ilir Latifi, maybe not Ilir Latifi, like not so much. But for a heavyweight, like the way he moves, the reason why he's a lot of decisions, I suppose, in terms of the positive and the negative, is that he hits you from an area that you really can't hit him. And once you're doing that, isn't that the perfect thing to really do in mixed martial arts? So instead of kind of utilizing his his advantages for good, and it's weird to say he's using them for bad, but he's using them to scrape fights rather than to dominate people. And I feel like he's still at a young stage of his career in terms of a heavyweight. Only 18 fights in. 33 is young for a heavyweight. He could still come, and I thought last year, honestly, when he beat Ante D'Elia and the way he did, I thought it was coming, but he lost to Linton Vassell in that weird fight. But Billestini, I really like Billestini. He beat him last time out. It'll be interesting. Whereas Romanov, the other side of it, then, a great wrestler. His single leg is really, really good, especially against the cage, which is a bit unusual again in mixed martial arts. Fights out of the southpaw position, and he can be taken down himself in fights. That's one thing I noticed in some of his fights, and especially some of his losses. Look, the Dalton and Maida fight, I suppose, which turned into a bit of a calamity for him, losing so early. And what was the other fight I watched today? Maybe it was the Tabora fight, but yeah, he can be taken down, and I think if you're Moldavsky, I think he'll be able to beat him on the feet and be able to use his range, but the southpaw dynamic as well with that, the lead right leg, I think the single leg might be open. He's been taken down with him before, and to take away the wrestling of Romanov, wrestling yourself is probably a good way to do it. So I could see that. I just think Moldavsky is going to be too clean for him on the feet, and I think if he needs to, he can wrestle him. So Moldavsky is definitely the pick in that one. So we have we've talked about all the tournament fights. Some of the other fights on the card, Baggio Ali Walsh is back again against Ronnie Gibbs here. Looks Muhammad Ali's grandson, so interesting to see him on it. Rafael Xavier again against Carl Albrechtsen. I assume that's a backup fight. Interesting fight, Albrechtsen, a guy who's been in there with everyone. I think that's just going to be 15 minutes of kickboxing and probably a split decision at the end of it, and probably a very, very close one again. But the standout fight for me is Sergio Pettis against Raufeon Stots. Again, a bit odd because they both or they either do or have trained out of the same gym in Rufus Sport. Both guys obviously coming over from Bellator. It's been a good bounce back for Raufeon Stots over the last while. Obviously, he beat Danny Sabatello a couple of times either side of the patchy mix loss. Beat Marcos Brino back in October of last year, so it's been a while out of the cage. And the same for Sergio Pettis. It's this time last year, almost to the day since, is it going to be exactly today? In fact, the 9th? No, it's the 27th. I'm going crazy. Never mind. But, he lost 2 in a row, the Haraguchi fight and the mixed fight. After obviously beating Haraguchi in that wonderful, knockout of the year type of spinning back fist in 2021. And in the Patricio fight, where no one gave him a chance with Patricio coming down, and he just dominated him. So it's a big fight for both guys, to, I suppose, put themselves in the mix for what's next in that division, because Patchy Mix is gone now. The tournament has gone on as we speak. Could the winner of this fight the winner of the tournament? I know the PFL Europe tournament is going on. Caelan Loughran has been signed now as well. It's very, very interesting to see where, I suppose, the winner and where the loser of this fight goes in the near future. Stots is a big favourite. I was kind of surprised here, minus 265. Pettis plus 200 underdog. And look, probably that's because of Pettis having lost 2 fights in a row. Hasn't had a win since, that Patricio fight in June 2023. But again, Stots at 36 years of age in that division versus 31-year-old Pettis might be a thing, when, again, a lot of his fights are won via decision. I really like him as a fighter. He can do it all, really. His defensive ability against Danny Sabatello, his wrestling defensive ability, very, very good. His jiu-jitsu is very, very good. He can strike. But, the Pettis brother, Sergio Pettis, especially, his ability to control a fight, his technical ability on the feet when at his best is very, very good. And, I don't know, that underdog pick might be, wait for the betting show tomorrow, but that might be the way to go on this. I'm not not necessarily ready to write off Sergio Pettis at the top of that division yet. He could very well be a PFL bantamweight champion by the year end, maybe. So watch this space. I just think maybe over 3 rounds, Sergio Pettis can get that jab going, get behind it. And, sometimes Stots fights tend to kind of drift, and he tends to lose them when they drift. Now, he hasn't lost that many fights. When I say he tends to lose them, he tends to have very close fights when they drift like that. The Sabatello fights being the obvious ones, and like the mixed fight didn't go too long. But yeah, I'm gonna go Pettis, and maybe by decision. So that is that. Have I talked about all the fights? I think I have. So we have Edwards and Silveira in the middleweights, and Rosta and Jeffery light heavyweights of Cauley and Davis, Antonio Carlos Jr. and Powell, as well as Romanov and Moldavsky in the heavyweight division, and Popov and Nascimento sandwiched between Sergio Pettis and the great fight against Raufeon Stots. So let's see all of that. Looking forward to seeing it. All on June the 27th, which is Friday night on the Zone here in the UK, Ireland, and other parts of the world, and on ESPN Plus, I believe, over in America. So that's it for me. Thank you to everybody for tuning in. Let me know your most confident pick in the comment section below, and we'll see you all for the post show. Thank you for watching. See you next time. Good luck.